Welcome to The Wonder, exploring perspectives, rituals, and observances of modern, naturalistic, earth-revering, pagan religious paths. Here are your hosts, Yucca and Mark.
Welcome back to The Wonder, science-based paganism. I'm your host, Mark.
And I'm Yucca.
And today we are going to talk about children's activities for springtime. In most places by now, spring has sprung, and there are green shoots and trees leafing out and flowers and the sweet smell in the air. And the weather has become, if not mild, then milder. And it's just a time for celebrating spring. And we often associate childhood with spring.
Right. And I want to say that before we get going, we're going to be talking about kids, but a lot of these activities can be for kids of all ages, right? Just because we're going to be thinking about children doesn't mean you can't be your 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever age you are, right? So if you've got kiddos in your life, that's awesome. And if you just want to feel a little bit young at heart, then that's great too.
Yeah, that's a really important point, I think, because I mean, at least as I celebrate the Wheel of the Year, when there's a focus on children around the time of the spring equinox, and then going into young adulthood around May Day, it's not only to celebrate those members of the community that are at those stages in their life, it's also to celebrate those qualities in ourselves, right?
Right.
We all still have a kid inside us, and that playfulness and punishment of discovery and kind of wonder and awe that comes in a childlike view of the world are great things for all of us.
Yeah. So this time of year, we've got the new life or the waking up of life happening, the popping back in. A lot of our holidays have to do with this reemergence of life and newness of things. Is there anything else that really speaks kid to you about this time of year?
The bright colors, the colors of flowers, the mating plumage of birds, the fruit trees leafing out and flowering. And we associate bright colors with this, both with childhood, those kind of primary colors that are used in a lot of children's toys and so forth, but also with this time of year with brightly colored eggs and jelly beans and things like that as well. So that's something else that I associate with this time of year, is just really super colorful, bright color palette.
Right. Yeah, I see that too. And for us also, the getting back outdoors. In our climate, this really is when we can be spending lots of time outdoors again. I mean, we do anyways, but it's far more pleasant to do it when it's not literally freezing, right? When you can go out and you don't have to have the shoes on, and you can not worry about bundling up you can just go out, right? You don't have to make it this whole ordeal to get them all wrapped up and to get you and you can just go. There's a freedom, there's a just sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
there's an exuberance that goes with that, right? I mean, you feel that soft air on your skin.
Yeah.
That wonderful soft spring air on your skin. And after being indoors for months, that's a very pleasant change of pace.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get into some of the things? Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was going to suggest. Let's do that.
All right. Well, we were brainstorming a little bit before and came up with a huge list of stuff to get into, and I'm sure that we'll miss some of the things.
Sure we will.
But the first thing that really pops into my mind is the spring cleaning. I know you might think of this as more of like a grown-up sort of thing, but I think that, at least for us, having the kids fully involved with all of the household activities is really important, because they're part of our society too. right? And if you want them to be able to do their laundry when they're 20, well, then they need to start doing their laundry earlier on. They need to be part of that process, not have it be this huge ordeal when suddenly they're on their own and oh goodness, right? Like, no, they just, they're part of the household. They're involved in that. And so same thing with any other activity we're doing. And so the spring cleaning, there's something about spring. I know it's cliche, but I think we've recognized it for a long time that it's, you're opening up the windows, you're letting that fresh air in. There's that new beginnings happening in the outside world. And so we kind of bring that into the inside world. And I think it's really important for their agency, their self-agency in that, and getting to choose, okay, well, let's get rid of these things. They don't fit you anymore. Is there one or two that you want to save as a keepsake? And if so, where are you going to fit that? Because there's a limited amount of space right there, right? And just having them be part of that process and, making it kind of a fun thing, I think is really powerful.
Sure. Yeah. When you've been closed up inside for months, things pile up. Just a lot of junk. You put something down and forget about it, and then 2 months later it's still there. Well, it's time to move that thing now.
With 3 things on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing, kids really like doing adult stuff. They like being involved in things that feel real, right? So, you'll have, kids with like toy razors and, stuff like that, because they want to pretend to be adults. And so, hey, why don't you help me clean out the garage? To an adult, that may sound like, I don't want to clean out the garage. But to a kid, it's like, hey, I get to clean out the garage.
Yeah.
So
it depends on how you sell it, right?
Of
and
course.
It depends on what else they're doing. If you're saying, why don't you stop playing Minecraft right now and come do something else, you might not get the buy-in, right?
Yeah.
But you got to kind of think about how to do it and have it be an invitation. And it's such a tricky balance that, every family figures out what works for them with their values and the particular people that are involved. But for me, I try and be very careful about not making it a requirement, right? Not making it this sort of, well, if they aren't, if they don't want to come work with me in the greenhouse, like, that's okay. I wouldn't force my partner to do that, right? So why would I, force my kid to do it? I don't want to make it this obligation thing. And so there's some trust in there, right? That kind of has to be built between the people involved. But most of the time I find that it ends up is, if I'm mindful about what space they're in, they often are pretty interested in coming and participating and doing their share of it. That's not to say that we don't have things that are their responsibility, right? They certainly have their chores and things like that. But when it's inviting them to come do new things and learn new things and fully participate in the adult world of running the household, making sure that it isn't this gloomy pressure thing, I think is really important.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, there are ways you can sell it. If it's like, in the morning at breakfast, the next 3 days are special days. They are spring cleaning days. We're gonna get our whole place together here. It's really exciting. So I'm going to be working in the garage. Who'd like to help me?
Yeah. And you get to pick out the music when we're in the garage, right? You're working with me in the garage. You're the one who gets to pick the song, or, that kind of thing. And again, it's just always going to depend on the particular person, because for some people that's exciting, and for others are like, I get to pick out the music, so what? Like, that doesn't mean anything to me, right? But
Right.
Yeah, but setting aside it's that time, and this is one thing that this kind of general parenting thing that we found, because I know that a lot of other parents really struggle with ourselves included. I'm saying this is something that we as a society have, is that struggle with the balance between screen and non-screen time, that we try and set an expectation of, well, during the morning time, like that just isn't screen time. Nobody's doing screen. And the hardest thing is just if parents aren't doing screen, kids aren't doing screen, it's just not, that's not when you do screen. Screen is something that happens in the afternoons and sometimes into the evening, but not at night, right? Like you just set up the expectation and just kind of have to stick to it and be the model for it. And I always find that the hardest part. It's easy for me to like tell them what to do. Be like, you can't be on the screen. It's a lot harder for me to put mine away. But it's absolutely ineffective if I tell them not to do it while I'm sitting here doing it. Because they're not stupid, right? They have humans have a fierce sense of fairness.
They do.
Yeah. So
yeah, and you know, the concept of injustice is something that we developed very early. Yeah, you know, if you're doing it and I'm not allowed to do it, there's something wrong. Yeah. So one thing that it occurs to me, because we were going to talk in a moment about decorating the house for the season, right? And it occurs to me you can actually tie this to the spring cleaning piece, where it's like we clean it first and then we decorate it. So to get to the fun, crafty decoration part, we got to clean it first. And so it becomes, you know, a kind of a seamless project where the whole thing, you know, we're decorating, but of course, to decorate, we've got to get this stuff out of the way first.
Yeah. You got to have a clean wall to do that with. Get rid of those handprints. We all have those handprints. You know what handprints I'm talking about, right? Yeah, there's just so many of them everywhere. So I love that. Yeah. And again, just always making it into that kind of fun thing. Because the point of it is I think of it as to be joyous, right? That this is life we get. You know, why is it that we want our houses to be clean? Well, so that it feels good to be in them, right? So that we're healthy, so that we enjoy being in them, so we can be productive. But why do we want to be productive? So that we can be happy, right? It all comes back to, you know, what's to just enjoying the life that we have, right? And you know, we're taking care of our loved ones, but again, so that they can be happy because we love them.
Really well said. Yeah, I think it's important to always, you know, root our actions, you know, and our recommendations of actions in exactly that. You know, how is this making your life better, or how is this making the world better, or both? Right. You know, those are the, you know, to my mind, those are the two edicts that we have being alive. You know, live a really full, joyous, amazing life, and, you know, leave something better than it was when you got here. And I mean, that's a very fulfilling kind of life to have. And so, yeah, exactly so.
Yeah. So there's the decorating, the spring decorating. I always think bringing some of what's happening in the outside world into the inside world. I was just sharing with Mark earlier, our daffodils have just started. So we're recording on the 15th. So where I live, our daffodils just bloomed. And Mark, you were saying they were blue for you. It was January, right?
End of January,
yeah. But a couple cut daffodils, you know, in a little, we don't have any fancy vases, so it's mason jar, right? So we have it sitting in a mason jar on the table, and bringing in some of the things. We still have a lot of our feathers up and things like that, and just bringing some of the stuff from outside in. And of course, my kids love bringing in rocks. We have piles of shiny rocks all over the place that the cat then goes and knocks down, because they're the perfect size for knocking down. So in the middle of the night,
you got a whole ecosystem going there.
We do, yes. And then you step on them. And it just reminds you that you're alive when you step on rocks brought in by children, knocked over by cats. And all of that, I think that gets at just to remember also that when it comes to kids, you just kind of got to go with the flow with them sometimes. And they're not going to be perfect at things. They're learning. This is them learning for the first time. And we've had years and years of practice at everything from, you know, how to move our hands to regulating our emotions when we're disappointed. And they haven't yet. And this is them learning to do that. And so it can be tricky to let go of some of the expectations of how it's going to look and how well to get it done, and it's okay. It's really okay as long as it functions, as long as nobody's in danger and gonna get hurt and it's healthy, right? It's not dirty to the extent that it's unhealthy or something like that. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's good to remember with ourselves, coming back to there being inner children in all of us, just to give ourselves that grace a little bit sometimes too. So
Yeah, that's well said. I really agree with that.
yeah.
So you can bring in flowers from the outside. You can bring in like boughs from a lilac bush that's blooming, or cherry tree that's blooming. All of those things make for pretty nice sort of tabletop decorations. You can bring in bright spring leaves. I mean, we tend to think of leaves as being more of an autumn thing, but those bright green spring leaves, you can string them on a thread and hang them up, or just use them sort of to carpet the horizontal surfaces in your house, whatever.
Or a little clear bowl, like a little glass bowl, and put those in them, and very beautiful. Yeah. So next, why don't we talk a little bit about crafts? So there's art and crafts, right?
Right.
And people are gonna there's a Venn diagram there, and where they overlap people is gonna depend on each person's preferences, right? For me, I think about art as something that doesn't necessarily have a purpose other than just the process of making it and the enjoyment of looking at it, right? Whereas the craft has another purpose behind it, like a kind of the traditional kid craft is weaving the pot holder or something like that. So you have the process of making it, but then it's also an object that has a purpose afterwards, right? So springtime, there's definitely lots of the sorts of, making the bird feeder or that kind of outdoor sorts of things. What we look for is things that the kids can do that's important to the household, where they get to be part of what needs to happen, and that has a real purpose to it. Because again, coming back to they're smart, right? They know when we're just making something up to give them busy work, and they know when it's something that really matters. And it's so important for their self-efficacy, right? To know that they are contributing and they are able to contribute. So when we can come up with tasks for them to do that can be uniquely theirs, that are kind of crafty sort of things, I think that's a really nice opportunity, right? And that's just going to depend on what's happening in what your household is like. What are you, rural, urban? Are you temperate, tropical? All of those things are going to vary.
Right. Although that said, bird feeders are a pretty good choice because there are birds pretty much everywhere of one kind or another. And if you put out food for them, they will eat it. They will show up and they will eat it. We have a very active couple of bird feeders here at our place, one for hummingbirds and one for passerine birds. And they sure go through that bird seed. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the jobs, which is my kids. They go out and they take out the bird seed and they clean the water dishes as well, because we're in a very dry environment. So having water out is almost more important for our wildlife than the seed, right? It's easier to find food than it is to find water, but we want to make sure that that's clean so that we're not spreading diseases, right? So they go out and they swap out, depending on the dish. We have a couple that they bring the dish in and we just swap it out every day, right? So it gets washed every day with the dishes and then it goes back out. And so that's one that they know if they don't do, then the birds don't get their food, the chipmunks don't get their food, and the squirrels don't. Now, I could imagine for a kid who struggles with anxiety, that might not be a good fit for them, right? Where if that might be anxiety inducing, but depending on the personality, for mine, that's something that is an empowering experience for them. And just as they're grown-ups, we just need to be kind of tuned in to how is this likely to be received with the particular person that we're shepherding and helping, right? But it's lovely for them to be like, oh, I haven't fed the birds yet. The poor things, they're going to be so hungry, right? And it's like all the 8 in the morning. It's like, yeah, it's okay. You can go do it. They'll appreciate it.
They're not quite that fragile, but yes, you remembered, and it's your job, and that's great.
And so, and I think I shared my favorite one. This is not a spring activity, but just for a suggestion of types of activities that we did this year that worked out so lovely is our house is heat with passive solar and a wood stove. And so we have to light a fire in the cold months of the year. And so in the fall, the kids gathered lots of little sticks and made the little Kindle bundles. And that was their job. And so every time we lit a fire, we were lighting it with the bundles that the kids made, right? So that kind of activity. And that was just so lovely because every day it was something they're a little bit too young to actually be starting the fire on their own, right? We're really big on them doing lots of stuff in the household, but they're still, my oldest is only 6.5. So I think, wait a few years till she's lighting fires, but she still got to be part of that really important thing. And the littlest, he got to be part of that as well and get to feel like, wow, I contributed, I'm part of the family, I'm important. And I plan to be there as long as I can for them, right? I want to make it to the triple digits if I can, but there will be a time when I'm not there to help them and they have to do it on their own, right? And so I want them to be as prepared for that as possible in a way that is as smooth, right, as can be, right? Because people will figure out how to do it. Humans will figure out how to survive, but if it can be as painless a process as possible, I think that's nice.
I think so too. Yeah.
Then they can spend that effort on something else. So.
So yeah. So do you want to talk about other kinds of craft activities? I mean, the classic for this time of year is dyeing eggs.
Absolutely.
It's a little late in the year this year for doing that, but it's still really cool, especially if you use natural dyes. And there are techniques you can use to put like leaf prints on the sides of the eggs and stuff, really make them beautiful. And it just then you have hard-boiled eggs you're going to eat and just a little more color to your breakfast.
Yeah. And you can also, if you're using natural dyes, you can boil your eggs, peel them, then dye them. And then you actually, when you eat your eggs, you have colorful eggs. And that usually goes over pretty well with the kids.
I bet.
Right? It won't go all the way through, but you get that top, few millimeters or so. Sure. So you get like the little ring, and if you slice the eggs in the little like discs, that's really nice.
Okay.
Oh, and doing deviled eggs and dyeing it different colors, that's really fun too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't imagine deviled eggs with blue yolk mixture.
Yes. Well, and if you dye the outside of it a little bit too. And this might be just a little kid thing, but a lot of kids that I've known really like when you present the food in a more fun way. Right? What we'll make little like scrambled eggs, and I have cookie cutters, and so I'll fry them in the pan in the cookie cutters so it's the shape of a T-Rex when they eat their eggs, right? So much more fun. Now you have T-Rex eggs, right? So, and you could definitely do that with this sort of spring themed things, right? All your bird nests.
They can tell their friends that they had dinosaur eggs for breakfast.
Well, they did. My kids are very fond of telling me that chickens are dinosaurs.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
They sure act like dinosaurs.
Yep. Well, why don't we talk also about the outside stuff? Because since spring, this is when we can get back outside. And there's all kinds of fun games. There's all the, the classic childhood games, your capture the flag, hide and seek. setting up little like scavenger hunts. As long as we're talking kids, one of the traditions that we have started doing now that we're in the losing teeth time period is we don't do any of the like tooth fairy or Santa Claus or any of that because I'm uncomfortable with lying about it, right? And I know some people, it's just something that is not comfortable for me. So instead of having a tooth fairy come and give the kids money, we do a scavenger hunt every time they lose a tooth. And then there's something like a little prize at the end. Yeah.
Nice. So there's still a ceremonial recognition of this thing that's happened, and a fun activity and a little reward. Yeah.
And for my oldest, when they lost their first tooth, they'd been asking for a watch for a while because I wear a watch. And I had been reluctant to give them a watch because they're pretty rough with their hands and breaking things and all of that. But when they lost their tooth, I got a watch for them, and that was their prize. But each of the steps on the scavenger hunt was going to places where they have done things that they've been growing up and maturing in the family. So they went to the greenhouse where they help water the plants. And we went out to the wood pile where they help go get wood, and out to the bird feeder where they feed the bird, right? And going from spot to spot with a little note about like how you've been contributing and growing up. And then at the end, they got to get their watch. They were mature enough that they had showed they were mature and old enough to get their watch when they lost their first tooth and all of that.
Oh, that's lovely.
So I think that with families, there's so much possibility, and it's coming up with ideas like that. It's just you get to play, right? Play with these ideas of what is it, and bringing in some of the silliness to it or the fun. I tried to write as teeny tiny as I could with that, right? Because we were playing with the tooth fairy thing. She's very insistent though that stuff doesn't exist. She's like, we don't believe in gods. There's important stories, but we don't believe in them. And the tooth fairy is kind of like a god, but not really, because I don't have any books about her. And I'm like, okay, well, we could give you a book about her. So, but coming back to the outside stuff, I think that getting outside, playing outside, and something that we don't, it's amazing how much we don't have of this in our modern lives, but just having free, unstructured time is just so critical. So important for littles and really important for adults too. Just to be able to be out and just do whatever your curiosity leads you to, or notice that butterfly that's going there, or enjoy taking that stick and seeing how many times you can break it in half. Whatever it is that coming up with your adventure games, your make-believe stories about how you can transform into a giant snake or whatever it is. It's just so important for kids. And the spring just feels like perfect for that because you can do that stuff inside, but there's something very different about being outside, out of the physical structure, right? Out of these boxes that we live in, these literal boxes, right? If you're inside, I'm guessing that a few of you might be listening to this on a walk right now, but the vast majority of people listening, I bet you're inside a box right now. You're inside a metal box, which is your car. You're inside a wooden frame box, which is your house, or maybe it's concrete or steel. But we spend a lot of time in these really defined structures that just feel very, very different than being outside with messy lines and flowing forms that are moving because there's a little bit of wind going through them and the clouds, and there's just so much more. I don't even know the words, but it's outside is messy, right?
Yeah, there's so much more to experience out there, obviously.
It's dynamic, yeah.
It's always moving and changing. The sky is always changing, and it's full of those shaggy fractal shapes, right? repeating patterns that make up the shape of a coniferous tree or a particular kind of shrub or whatever it is. And having those kinds of patterns, for some reason, is very reassuring to people. It's good for our mental health to see those kinds of things, and we find them very beautiful, it's good for us. The experience of beauty is good for us. So while you're outside, you might want to have something to drink. So I have a recipe for raspberry lemonade. And so let me give you this. Should be pretty simple. You can jot it down. You can stop the podcast, jot things down, and then continue. It is tasty and refreshing childlike beverage for spring. So what I'm about to tell you about serves 12. So you need 3/4 of a cup, and I'm not going to give the metric conversions. I've got them, but I'm not going to give them. 3/4 of a cup of fresh or thawed frozen raspberries, 9 cups of water, 2 cups of freshly squeezed lemon juice, which is about 12 lemons, and then 2 cups of very fine or powdered sugar, which is less than was in the original recipe that I adapted this from, because I like my lemonade kind of tart. I don't like it super sweet. So you puree the raspberries in a blender and strain them through a sieve to take the seeds out into a pitcher. And then you add everything else and whisk it together until the sugar dissolves and pour over ice and serve. It's very simple, but it's delicious. Really, really good. And if you need an adult version of this, it goes well with vodka.
Yeah. And with the sugar, you could probably put less in, taste it, and then just keep adding to taste.
Yes.
Right?
That's a good idea, because people have different amounts of tolerance for sugar, different amounts of taste for sugar.
Yeah.
So.
But it seems like it's such a simple, easy recipe that you can just add in as you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. And it's a delicious, tasty beverage to have on one of those warm spring days.
Yep.
When the kids have been running around, and they're finally starting to flag, might be time to plunk them down and have something with some electrolytes in it, and get some water into them.
Yeah. And then before we know it, it'll be the hot time of year, right?
Yep,
So.
indeed. It's not far off, for sure.
Well, is there anything else, Mark, that we should touch on in our
spring
pagan kitty activities?
Other than just to encourage everybody to go out and play. Go out and kick a ball around, or do whatever it is that you like to do outside that's fun. This is a great time of year in the Northern Hemisphere to be out under the sky and just really enjoying the great outdoors. So really encourage you to do that in whatever manner works best for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone.
Lovely to have you with us as always. Thanks so much for supporting the podcast. And just a quick reminder, the conference that we're doing in June, registration is still open, and will be until a few days before the conference. We'll put the link to how you get the information and register and all that kind of stuff in the show notes.
Right. And I will be doing a kids activity. So there will be an activity for kiddos if they want to come and join us for that. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.